Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Decided I'm going to do something just a little bit different, something I've wanted to do for a while. So you see on other YouTube videos or on TV, on interviews, they do this or that. And I thought, well, this would be a fun place to start with one of my favorite musicians, and probably a lot of yours who are watching this, Uncle Neil. Neil Young just turned 76 this past week. He's one of those who, for better and sometimes for worse, follows his own muse, always has. He does, Neil does what he wants, when he wants, how he wants it. And the amount of respect that I have for that is astronomical. Now, that doesn't mean I enjoy everything he does. Personally, I'm more of an Electric Neil fan. Neil and the Horse, Neil with the Stray Gators, Neil with Promise of the Real, even, who, I have to say, they're quite a band. So before we get going, here's to you. I've got Trader Joe's Dark Roast going, just the house blend. It's serviceable. It's not great. It's not bad. It just, it's good for a caffeine boost in the middle of the afternoon while I'm filming this. So, to give a little history on what I'm picking and why, my favorite studio record by Neil Young is Ragged Glory from 1990. The previous year he had put out one called Freedom. Rockin' in the Free World is on that. The title track to that was a fiery return to form. It had the social commentary. It had the killer guitar solo. It had the fuzzy sound. Old Black, the guitar was firing on all cylinders. But the rest of the album was really lackluster. It had a couple of good songs. I had originally picked that up because, one, I knew the title track, and two, it advertised itself. To me, it was false advertising. It was produced by Neil Young and Nico Bolas, the volume dealers. And I thought, man, this will be great. And yeah. And that was actually my first CD of his, and I thought, well, this isn't that good, but I didn't want to give up. So I don't remember if it was later that year or the next year, I picked up Ragged Glory, and I hadn't heard much of it. I'd heard, maybe snippets, because back then in the 90s, you could listen to song samplings on headphones in the record stores, and it was really fun. So anyway, Neil, throughout the 80s, sort of wandered a little bit. It was up and down. He followed his muse, like I said. He had made a couple of good albums, but honestly, Neil had not made a great record since the 70s by this point. So it had been, keep in mind, this is 1990, 31 years ago. So it had been well over a decade since he'd put out what many would consider a classic album. Ragged Glory, with maybe the ultimate version of Crazy Horse, with Frank Poncho San Pedro on guitar, Billy Talbot on bass, and Ralph Molina on drums. These guys, again, they were firing on all cylinders. They harnessed the energy and the momentum from Rockin' in the Free World and made one of the most focused, yet loose, enjoyable, hard-rocking albums that they've ever put out. Where this leads with this and that is the next year, following the Ragged Glory tour, a really good, excellent 2-CD set called Weld came out. It was recorded on the Ragged Glory tour. They played dozens and dozens of shows. What wasn't known at the time is Neil was fighting the flu during this tour. You never know it I'm not sure what all dates these came from. There's 2 CDs, 16 songs. You'd have no idea. The band was just smoking. Neil was on fire on here. Really, the set list, this has really become a beloved part of the Neil Young, and especially the Neil Young and Crazy Horse catalog. So that was 30 years ago that this came out. Flash forward to 2021, as part of the Neil Young Archives series, he's been re-releasing some studio albums. He's released some studio work that hadn't seen the light of day or had been bootlegged before. He's also released a bunch of performance. This is part of the PS, the Performance series. He's released a bunch of live recordings. So on November 13th, 1990, as a warm-up gig, Neil and the Horse went down to the Catalyst Club. So that was 31 years ago this weekend. It's the 14th as I'm recording this. They went down to the Catalyst Club, a little several hundred seat club in Santa Cruz, and did a warm-up gig. They hadn't played together live in quite a while. It was documented both on film and on tape. They recorded 20 songs over 3 sets and an encore. 19 of those, only because Cowgirl in the Sand, the tape got ruined, unfortunately. So it's not on the CD or the LP, but it's on the DVD with a front of house mix. But still, 19 of the 20 songs ended up way down in the rust bucket. When this was announced back in January, I think it was New Year's Day he announced it. It came out in February. The reviews that this was just getting were fantastic. Frank Sampedro, who was a longtime member, who's since retired from Crazy Horse, he's gone on record as saying this is his favorite live album that they did. And whereas by the time Weld was recorded, and by the way, there is a I don't know what you'd call it, a compendium, an extra part to this called ARC, and it's all feedback and fuzz, and it was funny, I guess, but it's, to me, not worth having. Weld is really where you want to go. This came out, and I bought it the day it came out. I was super excited. It's 19 songs over 4 LPs. It is 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 37 seconds. So I wanted to get the information right on these albums, and so I did a whole bunch of notes. So the this or that. So again, I'll keep holding them up as visuals, although at this point you know what they are. Weld, the original live album from the tour, 16 songs, 2 CDs. They have in common, they have 9 tracks in common between the 2 of these. So you have quite a bit. The songs that both have are Love to Burn, Cinnamon Girl, Mansion on the Hill, Fucking Up, Cortez the Killer, Love and Only Love, Like a Hurricane, Farmer John, and Roll Another Number for the Road. I go back a lot on my vinyl nights. I listen to the live Rust album by Neil, and I play Like a Hurricane. That's, for the record, that's my favorite Neil Young song of all time, even though it's kind of a hit and become a classic rock radio staple. That's one of those where anytime it's on, I'll listen to it, where, so many great songs, you think, oh, I've had enough. I can never get enough of that song. And what's neat is, on both of these, he took a 7 or 8 minute song that was already had a classic studio and live version to go with it, stretched it out over 13 minutes on each of these. And that's actually where this song, or this album, got its name. He said, we're going way down in the rust bucket. It takes up all of side 7 on disc 4 on the final album on Way Down in the Rust Bucket. So the songs that are different, on Weld, it opens with Hey Hey My My Into the Black, the electric version. So right off the bat, it's loud, it's in your face. Crime in the City comes from the Freedom album, and that was one of those where on the studio version, it's okay. They take a studio version, run with it, amp it way up. Crazy Horse does its thing. It becomes an absolute anthem. They cover, it's an interesting cover of Blowin' in the Wind by Bob Dylan. This was around the time of the Iraqi invasion, the Gulf War. So it actually starts out with bombs blasting and airplanes buzzing, and it's not the peaceful little folk ballad that Dylan originally recorded. Welfare Mothers is on here. I like the concept of it. At the end, it's kind of silly the way they're shouting. Mammoth version of Powderfinger on here. Great sort of slowed down version of Rockin' in the Free World. And then the title track to one of Neil's absolute classic studio records, Tonight's the Night, is on Weld. And none of those songs are on Way Down in the Rust Bucket. So if you're looking for some of the hits as well as a couple of deep tracks, Weld is the way to go. So again, that's finished out with Love to Burn, Cinnamon Girl, Mansion on the Hill, Fucking Up, Cortez the Killer, Love and Only Love, Like a Hurricane, Farmer John, and Roll Another Number for the Road, which closes at Roll Another Number on here. So what's interesting, and maybe more, at this point, there are so many versions of the live hits available. You can find them anywhere. So they were touring behind Ragged Glory, and on Weld, you have 5 of the 10 new songs from the new studio album available on here. On Way Down in the Rust Bucket, you actually have 3 more, so you have 8 of the 10 represented throughout the 4, and you can tell they were trying to feel them out, flesh them out a little bit, add things here and there, because although Neil is not nearly the revisionist that people like Bob Dylan and some others are, the studio versions are really just a blueprint for what they can do live. They're still recognizable, but a lot is added. So you have Love to Burn, Mansion on the Hill. I've used the F word a couple of times, and I'll put a little disclaimer. It's a song, it's a really fun song, actually. Just dirty and down and grungy. Fucking Up, Love and Only Love, Farmer John, and on Way Down in the Rust Bucket, you also have Over and Over, Days That Used to Be, and it opens with a 9+ minute version of the lead song on Ragged Glory, and it's probably my favorite song on Ragged Glory, is Country Home. It's just a sort of a feel-good song, for lack of a better term. At least to me it is. It's mid-tempo, it's upbeat, and then you have Surfer Joe and Mow the Sleaze, right? A sort of a deep cut from the Reactor album. Days That Used to Be, Bite the Bullet, Over and Over, Danger Bird, Don't Cry No Tears, Sedan Delivery, which, there was a killer version of on Live Rust years before. It's every bit as good here. T-Bone and Homegrown. Now, Homegrown, of course, would later, it was released on, I forget which one of these, might be Zuma, I can't remember, or American Stars and Bars, but he just put that out as part of his archive series, the Homegrown record, which is great, and I suggest checking out. T-Bone, also from Reactors, is to me the only throwaway track on here. It's just, I'm sorry, it doesn't do anything for me. It's probably meant to be fun, but I just, I could take it or leave it. But out of 19 songs, to have 18 that you think, oh my God, this is fantastic, it keeps it from being a 10 out of 10 record. So on Weld, you can tell that the performances are taken in big arenas. They're really playing it up for the crowd. The vocals are a little louder. The background vocals are louder. It just has a big sound and feel to it. Whereas Way Down in the Rust Bucket, it's a club recording. It sounds a bit like it, and that's great. And it's a little more raw. It probably resembles the studio version a little more. As far as the feel of it, the intimate feel, but again, they flesh out some of these songs. They take them and they make them longer. Cortez the Killer opens the second disc of Weld. It actually, and it's a little slower on Way Down in the Rust Bucket, it closes out the album. It's a really interesting closer. So I thought too, so they have 9 tracks in common. Between the two albums, you get 8 of the 10 studio songs that were from Ragged Glory. 5 are included on both. Interesting that even between the two albums, of the 21 studio records, 20 or 21 studio records that Neil had been a part of, and that's not counting any of his work with Buffalo Springfield or Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. All of the songs are culled from only 8 albums. So again, I kind of want to give you as much information as I can on these albums, on maybe buying them if you haven't, and why I'm going to pick things. Ragged Glory is represented with 8 songs total. So there's 5 overlaps. Russ Never Sleeps has 3 songs on Weld and 1 song on Way Down in the Rust Bucket. Freedom has 2 songs on Weld and none on Way Down in the Rust Bucket. Tonight's the Night has 2 songs on Weld and only 1 on Way Down in the Rust Bucket. The one song that both have in common, it's the only one from that album, Cinnamon Girl, comes from Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere, which was the first Neil Young and Crazy Horse album. So Neil went all the way back to the 60s and played through 1990, which was the most current studio album at the time. Zuma has 1 song on Weld and 3 songs on Way Down in the Rust Bucket. American Stars and Bars has 1 song on Weld and 3 on Way Down in the Rust Bucket, and that's the one with Like a Hurricane on it. Reactor has 0 songs on Weld and 2 songs on Way Down in the Rust Bucket, including, like I said, Surfer Joe and Mow the Sleaze, which, a song about a bum and a drug dealer, and it's really, I shouldn't say this, but it's kind of a fun song. I really like it. And then Blowin' in the Wind, Neil had not released on any album, live or studio to that point. He would later release it as part of the box set for his album called A Letter Home, which he recorded with just he and his guitar at Third Man Records in a record recording booth. And it sounds exactly like an old 78 record, but longer. So overall, you can't go wrong with either one of these. And I think anybody watching who has these albums, who has both, would agree that whether you want to go with 1991's Weld, 16 tracks, 2 CDs, a few more hits on it, or whether you want to go with Way Down in the Rust Bucket, 19 songs, 20 if you get the DVD, 4 LPs, not quite as many hits, a few more deep cuts. You can't go wrong with either one of these. But since it's a this or that, and I have to choose, and it's actually quite hard, I'm going to side with the 4 LP set Way Down in the Rust Bucket. I'm going to do so because, again, this is more hits-based, and while they're hits for a reason, everybody loves them. You can get a lot of these elsewhere. Again, some of the versions are a lot more immediate and necessary. Crime in the City. I will say, Fucking Up on here is more true to the album. It's a little slower, it's a little meaner. Here, it sounds like they're rushing through it. So, you can't, you can't win them all. So, but despite that, I'm going to say, because this represents the new album at the time, and Neil's always been fearless. He's never been afraid to put new material, unheard material, does more what he wants. This is more what Neil and the Horse wanted. And I think this, Neil doesn't put anything out he doesn't want, but this was geared more toward reestablishing them in the fans' eyes. Has, again, a few more hits on it. Rockin' in the Free World is killer on here. I prefer the live version to the studio version. But I love the effort. I love the archival feel of this. There's supposedly, it was supposed to be this year. I don't know if it ever came out. hopefully next year. New vinyl pressings are delayed so bad right now here in the States. There's supposed to be a vinyl version of Weld coming out. I hope that sees the light of day, and it sounds great, but it would be neat to hear what Neil does with the mix on it now, these years later. Masters it for vinyl. But I'm going to go with this or that. I'm going with that, since I mentioned this one second. It's still available, from Neil's website. Get a hold of your local indie record store. I bought mine at Off the Record here in Grand Haven. But give your local brick and mortar store a call. Buy it from them if they can get it. And so there you go. My debut, this or that. One of my favorites, and probably one of yours too, Uncle Neil. Again, he just turned 76 this past week. I'm not going to say it. Yeah, I'm going to say, long may you run, Neil. Hopefully we've got quite a few more years out of you. And thank you guys for your kind attention. Please let me know if you've got these. Let me know what you think. Let me know which one you prefer. If you haven't heard them, use a streaming service, but only use it to sample. Don't make that your primary method of listening to music. Make it CD or vinyl. Play it on a stereo like it should be. And I would go with this one. If you're a Neil fan, you can get the other stuff elsewhere. This one's a little deeper. Dig a little deeper. It's worth the money. It's worth the time. So again, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing your comments, and we'll talk again soon.